Hello from Mindset Daily, wishing you a day full of health, peace, and happiness. Thank you for watching the Mindset Daily channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe to support us. Thank you so much.
Fear is something every single one of us experiences. But what if the very thing you're afraid of is the gateway to the life you truly deserve? Imagine an opportunity landing right in front of you. Something exciting, something that could change your future forever. And yet, you let it slip away because fear held you back. Maybe it was fear of failure, maybe fear of success, or perhaps fear of what others might think. And sometimes, it's simply the belief that we're not good enough. If you've ever felt that way, you're not alone. Every single one of us, including me, has faced those same doubts. But here's the difference. Successful people don't let fear control them. They use it. Fear is not a prison. It's a compass. It shows you where you need to grow. And on the other side of that growth lies opportunity. On the other side of opportunity is the life you've always dreamed of living. I remember when I first started, I was terrified of public speaking. My palms would sweat, my heart would race, and my mind would go blank. But I realized that if I wanted to share my message, if I wanted to make a real impact, I couldn't run from that fear. I had to go through it. And that's the first principle I want to share with you today. The only way out is through. Most people spend their lives building excuses to avoid what scares them. But what they don't realize is that by avoiding their fears, they're also avoiding growth, opportunity, and ultimately, their dreams. The only real way to conquer fear is to face it head on, to admit, yes, I'm afraid, but I'm doing this anyway. Now, I'm not saying you should be reckless. Fear of heights doesn't mean you should jump out of a plane without a parachute. What I am suggesting is that you identify the fears standing between you and your goals, then take consistent, measured steps to overcome them. If public speaking terrifies you, start by speaking up more in meetings. If rejection scares you, make just one sales call a day. If financial risk holds you back, begin by saving and investing small amounts. Over time, these small actions compound, and what once paralyzed you becomes second nature. I've always believed that if you work harder on yourself than on your job, your income will take care of itself. The same is true of fear. If you focus more on conquering your fears than avoiding them, courage will take care of itself. And that leads to the second principle. Fear diminishes in the face of knowledge. We fear what we don't understand, but the moment we educate ourselves and gain clarity, fear begins to lose its grip. If you're afraid of investing in the stock market, start by reading books, taking a course, or talking with successful investors. The more you understand how the market works, the less intimidating it becomes. If you fear starting a business, study proven business models and learn about marketing, sales, and operations. With each step, knowledge replaces uncertainty and confidence grows. I once met a gentleman at one of my seminars who was terrified of real estate investing. He admitted, "Jim, I just don't understand it. It feels so complicated, and I'm afraid of making a mistake that could cost me everything." I encouraged him to commit just 1 hour a day to learning, reading books, listening to podcasts, talking to investors, and attending local meetings. A year later, he returned a completely different man. He had bought his first property, and it was already producing positive cash flow. The fear that once held him back had been replaced by knowledge, and that knowledge gave him the courage to act. That's the power of education. It transforms the unknown into the familiar and fear into possibility. But remember, acquiring knowledge isn't a one-time event. It's a lifelong process. The world keeps changing, and what worked yesterday might not work tomorrow. The most successful people understand this and keep learning to stay ahead. Those who stay curious, who commit to lifelong learning, continuously expand their understanding of the world. And that leads me to the third principle. Fear loses its power in the company of others. One of the most damaging aspects of fear is that it makes us feel alone, as if we're the only ones struggling. But that's far from true. Every person you admire, every successful figure who seems confident and composed, has faced fear. The difference is they didn't face it alone. They surrounded themselves with people who offered support, guidance, and perspective. They built networks of like-minded individuals who understood the challenges and doubts that come with growth. I've often said you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. That applies not only to income and success, but also to courage. Spend your time with people who constantly worry, and you'll find yourself more fearful. Spend time with people who act despite fear, and you'll become braver too. So, seek out communities of growth-minded individuals. Join mastermind groups, attend seminars, connect with others on similar paths. Share your fears, your challenges, and your victories. Learn together, support one another, and grow side by side. I remember a young woman in one of my mastermind groups who had a brilliant business idea. She had a business idea with tremendous potential, but fear of failure kept her frozen. Every time she got close to launching, she found reasons to delay. One more tweak to the plan, one more piece of research, one more excuse to wait. But joining our mastermind group changed everything. She saw others confronting their fears and taking action anyway. She received feedback, encouragement, and, most importantly, the realization that she wasn't alone. We believed in her even when she struggled to believe in herself. 2 months later, she launched her business. It wasn't perfect. First attempts rarely are, but it was a start. With continued support and accountability from the group, her business began to thrive. That's the power of community. That's the power of facing fear together. Now, here's the fourth principle. Fear thrives in the soil of perfectionism. Many people hesitate because they're waiting for the perfect moment, the flawless plan, or the ideal circumstances. But the truth is, perfect is the enemy of done. The most successful people understand that action beats inaction every time. They know it's better to take imperfect action now than to wait endlessly for perfection, because later often never comes. As General George S. Patton once said, "A good plan violently executed now is better than a perfect plan executed next week." This principle holds true in war, in business, and in life. Think about the great innovations that shaped our world. They didn't start perfect. They evolved through trial and error, feedback, and constant improvement. The first automobiles, airplanes, and computers were all crude compared to what we have today. But they were a start. Without that imperfect beginning, the advanced versions we now enjoy would never exist. The same is true for your dreams and ambitions. They don't need to be flawless to matter. They just need to begin. Once they're out in the world, they can grow and improve over time. So if perfectionism is feeding your fear and keeping you stuck in planning instead of acting, adopt a new mantra: progress over perfection. Commit to small, consistent steps every day, even if they're imperfect. Over time, those small steps compound into extraordinary results. This leads to my fifth principle. Fear often disguises itself as practicality. Have you ever had a dream, a goal, or an idea that made you come alive, only to talk yourself out of it because it didn't seem practical? Maybe you wanted to start a business, but reminded yourself of the bills to pay. Maybe you longed to pursue a passion, but convinced yourself you had no time. Or maybe you wanted to take a bold leap, but labeled it too risky. The truth is, while practicality has its place, too often what we call practical is really just fear in disguise. Often what we call practicality is simply fear in disguise. The fear of the unknown, of failure, or of leaving our comfort zones. Truly successful people learn to balance practicality with possibility. They honor their responsibilities while still pursuing their dreams. They find creative ways to make the impractical practical, turning visions into reality. I once spoke with a man who longed to start his own business but insisted it wasn't practical because he had a family to support. As we talked, it became clear that his family wasn't the issue. Fear of failure was. So I asked him one simple question: what's more practical in the long run? Staying in a job that limits your income and fulfillment, or building a business that could provide financial abundance and show your children what's possible when you follow your dreams? Suddenly, his perspective shifted. Starting the business wasn't just a dream. It was the most practical choice he could make for his family. If you catch yourself dismissing opportunities as impractical, take a deeper look. Is it really practicality, or is fear hiding underneath? Remember, the most practical thing you can do for your future self is to face your fears today. Now, let's move to my sixth principle. Fear feeds on negative self-talk. The way we speak to ourselves directly shapes our courage, our confidence, and our ability to take bold action. Taking action in the face of fear becomes nearly impossible if your inner dialogue is filled with phrases like, "I can't," "I'm not good enough," or "what if I fail?" When you speak to yourself this way, you're essentially programming your mind for fear and inaction. The most successful people understand the power of self-talk. They've trained themselves to replace limiting thoughts with empowering ones. Instead of saying, "I can't do this," they shift to, "I haven't learned this yet, but I can." Instead of dwelling on, "What if I fail?" they ask, "What if I succeed? And even if I don't, what lessons could I gain?" This change doesn't happen overnight. It requires conscious effort, constant awareness, and consistent practice. But over time, as negative self-talk is replaced with positive affirmations, fear begins to lose its grip. The voice of doubt grows quieter while the voice of courage grows stronger. I remember a young man who attended one of my workshops. He had incredible talent and a natural gift for communication and leadership, yet he was held back by destructive self-talk. Every opportunity triggered thoughts like, "You're not ready. You'll embarrass yourself. No one will take you seriously." During the workshop, we worked on identifying and challenging these patterns, replacing them with more empowering beliefs. It wasn't easy. These thoughts had been ingrained for years, but he committed to the process. 6 months later, he reached out to share his progress. 6 months later, that young man had stepped into a leadership role at his company, something he once would have avoided. He was speaking up in meetings, sharing ideas, and making meaningful contributions. Yes, the negative thoughts still appeared from time to time, but he had learned to recognize them for what they were, just thoughts, not truths. He replaced them with empowering alternatives, and that shift changed everything. That's the power of transforming your self-talk. That's the power of mastering your own mind. Now, let's move to my 7th principle. Fear is diminished by definite purpose. When you have a clear vision of what you want to achieve and why it matters, fear loses its grip. It may not vanish completely. Few things in life are that simple, but it no longer has the power to paralyze you. Purpose becomes the force that pushes you forward, even when fear is present. Think about it. When you're truly committed to a cause, passionate about a goal, and convinced of your vision, you'll willingly face discomfort, uncertainty, and yes, fear, to bring that vision to life. That's why I always stress the importance of setting goals that inspire you, that align with your values, and that give your life meaning. With such goals, fear becomes less of a barrier and more of a signpost, pointing to the areas where growth is waiting. I once spoke with a successful entrepreneur who built a multi-million-dollar business from scratch. When I asked him about fear, his answer stayed with me. "Jim, I've never not been afraid, but I've always been more committed to my purpose." The truth is, successful people aren't fearless. They simply value their purpose more than they fear discomfort or uncertainty. So if fear is holding you back, start by clarifying your purpose. Get crystal clear on what you want, why you want it, and how achieving it will impact your life and the lives of those around you. Make your purpose so compelling, so exciting, that it overshadows every fear. Now let's move to the 8th principle. Fear is a poor predictor of the future. Fear has power because it paints vivid pictures of what might go wrong. It whispers stories of disaster. What could happen if you take a risk, make a change, or step outside your comfort zone? But here's the reality. Fear acts like a pessimistic fortune teller, exaggerating the chances of failure while ignoring your ability to rise to the challenge. Think back to your own life. How many times were you afraid to act, but when you finally did, your worst fears never came true? And even when problems arose, didn't you often handle them better than you thought you could? Most of us eventually realize that fear makes things look far worse than they really are. We imagine elaborate disaster scenarios that rarely, if ever, materialize. I recall one man who was terrified of leaving his secure job to start a consulting business. His list of fears was endless. What if he couldn't find clients? What if he couldn't pay his bills? What if he had to return to his old employer in defeat? Yet despite those doubts, he took the leap. And yes, he faced struggles. Building a client base took longer than expected, and there were months when money was tight. But none of his worst-case scenarios came true. He never lost his home, never went bankrupt, never had to beg for his job back. In fact, within a few years, his consulting business was thriving, giving him more income, more freedom, and more fulfillment than ever before. So remember this: fear rarely predicts your future. More often than not, it underestimates your strength and overstates the risks. Fear loves to paint a grim picture of what might happen if you take a risk or make a change. But here's the key: always question that picture. Is this fear based on facts or just assumptions? Is it really predicting the future, or is it simply exaggerating? And even if challenges do come, aren't you often more capable of handling them than you give yourself credit for? More often than not, fear is overblown while your strength is underestimated. That leads us to the 9th principle. Fear is transformed through consistent action. Too many people wait for fear to vanish before they move forward. They think, once I'm no longer afraid, then I'll start the business, have that conversation, or make that bold move. But courage doesn't work that way. Courage is action in the presence of fear, and it's that action that gradually turns fear into confidence. Think back to learning how to ride a bicycle. You didn't wait for the fear of falling to disappear. You felt it and pedaled anyway. Each attempt made you a little more confident until riding became second nature. Life works the same way. The fears that feel overwhelming now can be reduced, even eliminated, through steady, consistent action. Every time you act despite fear, you strengthen your courage muscle. You prove to yourself that fear doesn't have to stop you. You can still move forward, still achieve, still succeed. At one of my seminars, a woman shared her dream of creating online courses. Yet the thought of being on camera filled her with so much anxiety, it made her physically ill. Still, she had a message she deeply believed in, a message she knew could help others. So she chose to face her fear step by step. She began by recording short videos only she would watch. Then, she shared them with a trusted friend for feedback. Eventually, she created a small course for a supportive audience. Her fear never vanished overnight, but it became manageable. More importantly, her confidence grew. After a year of consistent action, she had launched multiple successful courses and built a thriving online business. The fear that once paralyzed her had been transformed into courage through steady, deliberate action. So if you're waiting for fear to disappear before you move forward, flip the equation. Act first, and the fear will shrink. That brings me to the 10th principle. Fear is often a sign you're on the right path. It may sound counterintuitive, but when you're pushing your comfort zone, pursuing growth, and chasing your dreams, fear is a natural companion. It means you're not settling, not playing small, but stretching yourself in ways that lead to real progress. On the other hand, the absence of fear can sometimes be a warning sign. It may suggest you're staying too safe, too comfortable, too familiar, and perhaps holding yourself back from your true potential. As novelist John A. Shedd wrote, "A ship in harbor is safe, but that's not what ships are built for. You weren't created to remain anchored in the harbor of comfort and routine. You were built to sail the open seas of possibility, even when the waters are rough, even when the journey involves fear." I once spoke with a successful business owner who had built his empire from the ground up. When I asked about fear's role in his journey, he told me, "Jim, I've learned to see fear as a compass. When I feel fear, I know I'm moving toward growth, and growth is where opportunity lives. So the next time fear shows up, before retreating to what feels safe, ask yourself, is this fear pointing me toward growth? Could it be signaling an opportunity to expand? If the answer is yes, that fear may actually be guiding you in the right direction. This brings me to my 11th principle. Fear is mitigated by preparation. While uncertainty will always exist, preparation weakens fear's grip. When you've done your homework, sharpened your skills, and built contingency plans, fear has far less power over you. Take public speaking as an example. If you've practiced your speech hundreds of times, mastered your material, and anticipated potential questions with solid answers, fear might still be present, but it won't paralyze you. Contrast that with stepping on stage completely unprepared. The difference is night and day. The same truth applies in business, relationships, or any challenge life presents. Preparation doesn't erase fear, but it gives you the confidence and foundation to face it head on. I once knew a young entrepreneur terrified of pitching his business to investors. Just the thought of standing before a room of seasoned, sharp-eyed professionals made his palms sweat and his heart race. But instead of letting fear paralyze him, he turned it into preparation. He studied each investor, learned their preferences, reviewed their past successes, and practiced his pitch until he could deliver it flawlessly. He anticipated objections, prepared solid answers, and even built backup plans for different scenarios. When the day finally arrived, was he still afraid? Of course, but fear no longer controlled him. It no longer threatened to derail his performance, because preparation had weakened its grip. So if there's something you fear, ask yourself, how can preparation help me face it? What skills must I sharpen? What knowledge should I gain? What plans can I create? Channeling your energy into preparation builds the foundation for courage. My 12th principle is this: fear is conquered one small step at a time. Too often, we think of overcoming fear as a dramatic all-or-nothing leap. But in reality, most fears are dismantled through small, consistent steps, each one strengthening your confidence. This process, what psychologists call gradual exposure, lets you prove to yourself through small victories that you can face fear, survive, and even thrive. Take public speaking, for example, one of the most common fears. Instead of diving headfirst into a large audience, start with smaller, manageable steps that allow your confidence to grow naturally. A gradual approach might look like this. Start by practicing in front of a mirror, then record yourself and review the video. Next, speak to a supportive friend or family member, then to a small group of friends, and eventually a slightly larger group, perhaps in a casual setting like a local club. Finally, when your confidence has grown through these smaller steps, you'll be ready to face a larger audience. Each step feels challenging but manageable, and every success builds the courage for the next. I once worked with a gentleman who was paralyzed by the fear of financial risk, the idea of investing, and possibly losing what he had worked so hard to earn, kept him from building the wealth he wanted. So we designed a gradual approach. He began by learning, reading books, and attending workshops. No money at risk, just knowledge. Then he practiced with a paper trading account, followed by a small real investment, an amount he could afford to lose without hardship. As his confidence grew and he saw results, he gradually increased his investments, always pushing just beyond his comfort zone. Today, he has a diversified portfolio that has greatly increased his net worth and set him on the path to financial freedom. He didn't conquer fear in one dramatic leap. It was step by step, inch by inch, through small but meaningful victories. So if you're facing a fear that feels overwhelming, break it down into smaller, manageable steps. Ask yourself, what's one action I can take today that moves me closer to overcoming it? So ask yourself, what small action can I take today to face this fear? Then take that step, and another, and another. Before long, you'll look back and realize just how far you've come, one step at a time. For my 13th principle, fear is diminished when you focus on service. When your attention is on yourself, how you might fail, what others might think, or what you stand to lose, fear tends to grow stronger. But when you shift your focus outward, towards serving others, providing value, and making a difference, fear often loses its grip. Think about it. A parent rushing into a burning building isn't worried about their fear. They're focused on saving their child. A business leader guiding a company through crisis isn't consumed with reputation. They're concerned with the well-being of employees and customers. A speaker who overcomes stage fright isn't focused on discomfort. They're focused on the impact their words could have on the audience. When your drive is to serve, to contribute, to create change, purpose outweighs fear. I once spoke with a successful author who had been paralyzed by the fear of criticism and rejection. She told me her turning point came when she stopped worrying about how her work would be judged and started thinking about how it could help. If my book could comfort even one person, offer insight, or give hope to someone struggling, then it was worth facing the fear of criticism, she said. That shift in focus changed everything. She told me that when she shifted her focus from herself to her readers, from fear to their needs, everything changed. Writing became less about exposing herself to criticism and more about offering value to others. Her first book went on to become a bestseller, touching not just one life, but thousands. And while she still feels a twinge of fear with each new release, it no longer keeps her from sharing her gifts with the world. So if fear is holding you back, shift your focus. Ask yourself, who needs what I have to offer? Whose life could be improved by my knowledge, my gifts, my presence? When you focus on service and the value you provide, fear quickly loses its grip. That leads to my 14th principle. Fear is transformed by perspective. The way we interpret fear, the meaning we attach to it, the story we tell ourselves, can either empower us or diminish us. Successful people have learned to reframe fear, to see it not as a barrier, but as an invitation. Not a warning to retreat, but a chance to grow. I remember speaking with an entrepreneur who said, I used to see fear as a red light telling me to stop. Now I see it as a green light, signaling that I'm about to enter a place filled with opportunity. That shift in perspective didn't happen overnight. It came through experience, by repeatedly facing fears and realizing that on the other side was not disaster, but growth. Not failure, but learning. Not loss, but gain. He told me he stopped asking, "What if I fail?" and started asking, "What if I don't try?" What opportunities might you miss if you let fear decide? What potential could remain untapped? What regrets might follow you later in life? This simple shift in questioning transformed his relationship with fear. It didn't eliminate it. Few things in life are that simple, but it changed how he responded. It shaped his choices, his actions, and ultimately the life he built. So if fear is holding you back, try experimenting with new perspectives. Could your fear be highlighting what truly matters to you? Could it be pointing you toward an area where growth is waiting? Could it be less of an obstacle and more of a companion on the path to your goals? When you reframe fear this way, it becomes less of a barrier and more of a bridge. It shifts from enemy to ally, from stop sign to starting line. That brings me to my 15th principle. Fear is conquered through self-belief. At the heart of many fears lies a simple but powerful question. Am I capable? Can I handle the setbacks, the challenges, the uncertainty? Do I have what it takes not just to succeed, but to recover and adapt if I stumble? The most successful people cultivate a deep belief in themselves. Not a naive belief that they'll never fail, nor an arrogant belief that they know everything. Instead, it's a steady confidence that they can learn, grow, and persevere. That belief is built not on wishful thinking, but on experience. By facing difficulties, finding a way through, falling down, and proving again and again through action that they can rise stronger each time. And perseverance proves that challenges can be overcome and goals can be achieved. I remember speaking with a woman who had built a thriving business after facing multiple failures. When I asked her about the role of self-belief in her journey, she said, "Jim, my belief in myself wasn't something I started with. It was something I earned by showing up, doing the hard things, and proving to myself that I could handle whatever came my way." Her words reveal an important truth. Self-belief isn't just a thought or a feeling. It's a practice, a habit, a way of living. It's built through consistent action, by facing fears, taking risks, learning from failures, and building on successes. So if you struggle with self-belief, if that inner voice keeps whispering, "You can't," or "You're not good enough," start small. Set a modest goal and achieve it. Then aim a little higher and achieve that too. With every step forward, your confidence will grow. With every challenge conquered, your self-belief will strengthen. And as that belief grows, fear will begin to lose its grip. It won't disappear completely, because courage is never the absence of fear, but it will no longer control your actions or limit your potential. To stay fearless doesn't mean you'll never feel fear. It means you refuse to let it dictate your choices, your actions, or your life. It's about acknowledging fear, respecting its message, and then choosing to move forward anyway, guided not by fear, but by purpose and conviction. Passion begins with a vision of what's possible. Within each of us lies a reservoir of courage waiting to be tapped. With the right mindset, the right strategies, and consistent action, you can transform your relationship with fear from paralysis to empowerment. Fear no longer needs to be an enemy you avoid, but a companion guiding you toward growth, pointing you to the areas that will bring the greatest rewards. The goal isn't to eliminate fear entirely. That's neither possible nor desirable. The real goal is to build your courage muscle so strong, so resilient, that when fear shows up, you can acknowledge it, learn from it, and move forward anyway. As Nelson Mandela once said, "I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear." So today, I challenge you to take one small step toward a fear that's been holding you back. It doesn't need to be a giant leap. Fear is conquered one step at a time. Take one modest action that moves you closer to your goals, your vision, and the life you truly desire. Then tomorrow, take another, and the day after, another. Soon, you'll look back and be amazed at how far you've come, at the fears you've conquered, and at the person you've become. The path to a fearless life isn't always easy. There will be moments of doubt, moments of discomfort, moments when you'll want to retreat to the familiar. But I believe in you. I believe you already have everything within you to face your fears and create the life you deserve. Stay fearless, not because you never feel fear, but because you never let fear have the final word. The truth is this: the quality of your life is directly tied to how much uncertainty you're willing to embrace. The more comfortable you become with the unknown, with risk, with rejection, with stepping into unfamiliar territory, the more freedom you'll gain to pursue your dreams, express your true self, and live unshackled by fear. So take that step, embrace the journey, and remember, you have everything it takes to rise above. Wishing you health, happiness, and the courage to stay fearless. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel, Mindset Daily.